All right, welcome to the Augur meeting on July 7th, 2025. Um, just a few items this morning. Release process after Open Source Summit North America and some discussions that we had in this group, uh, we have modified the way that we release Augur and specifically the branch management strategy that we're using. And this was after discussion with a number of people here. Well, John Strunk and Adrian in particular were part of this discussion that we had. And I think John McGinnis, I see you're here now, was also in that discussion. And so the basic process is now instead of having a dev branch that sort of feature changes go into and a main branch that we would occasionally patch, we now have the main branch is the main branch still. And when we do a release, that will be put into the release branch. So the short of the process change, and Adrian and John Strunk and John McGinnis can pipe in and tell me if I'm characterizing any of this wrong, is that instead of having two branches that new features would flow to that we would ultimately have to merge, now we have a singular path through the branches to a release, so that any change that goes into main would, of course, first go into main, and before it ultimately went into the release branch. And so, and if we needed to release something that was a patch on main, we could, if we needed to, cherry pick those commits off of main and create a new release. Um, is that about right? Did I remember and characterize that all accurately, folks?
Yep, sounds like it.
Okay, good. So yeah, so the main branch is still main. There is no longer a dev branch. Some of our documentation is being updated to that effect. In fact, I think there's a pull request that Adrian has in to update some of our documentation, um, as well as a pull request that John has in, I think, to update our process a little bit. So I'm just looking at the open pull requests now. So this clean build one and update for the branching model, these two PRs from last few weeks just need to be merged. We merged a number of the PRs that change the way that we build Augur to incorporate UV, which is a Python dependency management system. So now instead of having all of the dependencies specified in setup.pys for the various components of Augur, we now have an env.lock file, or sorry, a uv.lock file, and that uv.lock file is derived using the uv command from the project pyproject.toml file, and the lock file serves the purpose of ensuring that the dependencies are consistent and the same across really any form of distribution that Augur goes through. And another pull request that got merged in the last few weeks also creates a brand new container for our key manager system. Thanks again to John Strunk for putting that together. Anything I'm forgetting about our release process or recent pull requests that should be noted right now? Okay. And then we have some open PRs that need to be closed, and I just kind of showed you a bunch of what those are. And so some of the maintainers and I will be going about merging the rest of these later this week. probably tomorrow, and then doing a formal full release of Augur at that time. So um, yeah, that's what's going on there. And any questions about the open pull requests or any comments that anyone wants to make? All right. So then I guess somebody added Adrian, I'm assuming this was you, Podman still breaking, Podman build breaking.
I put that
Yeah,
down,
I've been
but yeah.
Okay.
yeah, I was creating a couple issues over the last week or so for issues I was finding with Podman, yeah.
And I think in a discussion that we had on Slack, I thought maybe we got to an understanding of what's happening, which is we're using some of the features that Docker has that haven't yet been incorporated into Podman.
Yeah, that's basically the TLDR of the I think there's two issues now that are Podman related, but yeah, that's basically the underlying reason for both of them.
And I'm certainly welcome suggestions. I'm inclined, since the Docker build is working so reliably now, to not try to also be compatible with Podman and having to roll back some of the features, but instead waiting for Podman to catch up to some of the new Docker features is the strategy I would suggest. To others have different thoughts about that.
I would probably add to it. It's going to be tricky for me because I think with eight not as a project seems to like the README and everything is saying like, hey, this Podman is the suggestion here. And I think uh, there's a pretty strong history of there being just weird bugs and issues trying to switch or dual wield both Podman and Docker. Um, so that's kind of, I think, largely why I've been using it. Like Podman is just what ships on my Fedora machine. Like it
Right.
works. And I think there was also some talk about using like supporting OpenShift better for some of these larger instances and things. So it feels like supporting Podman would be useful. I do already have a pull request open that solves most of the issues. I think there was I'm essentially I've been finding ways to essentially do the same things that we're trying to do with the sort of brand new Docker features, but in a way that's sort of more broadly compatible. So instead of one example is with like when we're copying files into the container when we're building it, there's a Docker like you can kind of do a chmod with the whole like symbolic like R plus or U plus R whatever, right?
Yeah.
They Docker introduced like a capital X version of that
Mhm.
as part of that symbolic notation, which basically means if it's a directory, set it to executable, otherwise don't.
Hmm.
So the directories are still traversable, but you're not just blindly setting everything to executable.
Yeah.
And so I was able to replace that with, and I'm working on kind of testing it, so it might be a draft, but I basically replaced that with just a new sort of run line after we copy all the files that just goes through and sets the permissions using, I believe find, like you can go find um, the files that we just copied and like use that to set the permissions. Yeah, that looks like
Yeah. I
it.
think
Yeah.
this is what you're describing.
Yeah, so it's stuff like that. Like I think it can be done in ways that are more backwards compatible. Um, and maybe that we can file an issue being like, hey, once Podman supports this, we can clean the syntax up and put it back to presumably the more intuitive version that it was before. Um, but Podman is kind of like
A lot of people
having
do.
that work in Podman is kind of my workflow at this point. So
Yeah, I know, and and I understand that, and and I had the reverse issues recently with 8 knot where I couldn't get it to run in Docker, but I could get it to run in Podman just fine. So I've had, yeah, I've certainly seen these like issues. I'm curious what John Strunk and John McGinnis think of of doing this. Obviously, I would want to test this with both Docker and with Podman because we did just do a nice demo at Open Source Summit North America showing people how basically the Docker just works, right? Like Callie and I were up there and we just issued the Docker compose dash dash Docker compose up dash dash build and everything started up and worked. And I don't want to like have a superstitious desire to not mess with that, which I'm sure that this PR is not intended to do. But uh, how do you suggest, I guess, is that test? I think that testing is pretty critical. Like I am certainly not opposed uh, to these changes categorically. Um, but it obviously, I don't want to break Docker, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So
I
I
guess
will
any,
say
it's
we do
like
have
a
that.
hesitation.
Oh,
Like, what is besides test? Like, pull it and run it locally. I guess that's where I'm like a little bit confused of the major. Like, I know it's like you don't want to mess with it because it works. So then let's test it and see it if it works.
yeah, I mean, I think partly I'm asking Adrian if he's done that.
I'll work on that probably today or something. I think infrastructure stuff is kind of taking my priority right now. But yeah,
And
there I think Callie's been asking me to test some other issues with 8 knot and things. So I do having a local instance of Augur on my machine it's going to help me a lot with testing 8 knot and things. So this is also pretty high on my list. Um, I also do we do also have that Docker sort of end-to-end test set up to kind of ensure that the Docker Compose
oh, that's
still
true.
works.
That's true. That's true.
I think it'd be really valuable to kind of clone that and have one that uses Podman just so we can see at a glance, like, hey, this pull request broke Podman but not Docker.
Yeah,
Like, I feel like that information would be useful to kind of, if the plan going forward is to try and support both.
yeah. I'm curious about one thing I've seen here recently on the PRs, and I don't know if this is our PR rules or, but I see these build Docker images for the pull requests skipped. Um, is that like some? And John, actually, John Strong's hand was up. So before I go forward and ask that question, let me just John, I
Yes.
saw your hand up earlier. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, Adrian basically covered it, but I guess my feeling is, personally, I don't care whether we support Podman or not. Um, I know that a lot of Red Hat folks want Podman support just because, Podman is a Red Hat project, essentially.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that's like why it is the default thing on Fedora and all that sort of stuff, right? Even though it's very easy to get Docker working on Fedora. But that aside, just as a project, I think it's important that we figure out what it is that we're going to support,
Hmm.
and then that there are automated tests to ensure that what we support works. And so, like Adrian was saying, if we're going to support Podman, we need to get an automated test in that makes sure that Podman continues to work.
So that would, I think, John, what you're suggesting is we would add this to the pull request checks, like add a Podman build in addition to a Docker build. Is that how we might implement?
Yes, right. So, we've got that end-to-end test that is running there on screen right now. And we would basically create a duplicate of that uses Podman and I guess Podman Compose um, to run on every PR, and basically nothing merges, that doesn't pass those tests.
That I think that's a good idea then. It if but I would, is there someone who might be able to write a Podman build test?
It sounds to me like it would just be a relative, like it should be relatively straightforward because like most of the end-to-end tests should already be there. I
Hmm.
can probably take that on too if since I'm kind of driving this, it seems like it's kind of my primary
Yeah.
use case at this point. So I can give that a shot and just copy the existing test and give it a first pass at swapping Podman in. And then if someone else, if I'm having issues, someone who maybe whoever wrote the end-to-end test could maybe give me a hand, but I'm not
Yeah.
expecting to necessarily need that level of.
So you'll take the Git, I think it's a GitHub action or something that is running the current tests that we're watching together right now, and just copy that and make a
Yeah.
Podman version of it. Yeah, that'd be fantastic, Adrian. Callie, I see your hand's been up for a little bit.
Yeah, I was just gonna add some additional context to the Podman thing. Is that hatters are not allowed to have Docker desktop running on their machine for a variety. It's a long story,
I'm
but
sure I understand.
yeah. So that's like another thing that's pushing towards like if we're gonna have like why 8 knot is on Podman is largely pretty much completely we used Docker up until the day that we got the notice that was like you need to have Docker desktop uninstalled on your laptop pretty much tomorrow was what ended up happening. And so
Yep.
we had to move everything over to Podman. And so I think it makes sense for since a lot of people are using this as a like 8 knot and Augur together to have Podman functionality so that it kind of that it pairs.
Okay. I'm certainly not opposed to it. I would welcome Adrian's help putting that into place. And in case you're watching and looking, and I don't know why does this keep skipping? I don't understand this skipping.
So the push image
Yeah.
skips because that is a pull request, and we don't want to push the images on a pull request.
Okay.
So the images build as a part of the end-to-end test. So
I
we
see.
know that the build of the images succeeds. It's just that the steps that actually push it to the GitHub container repository don't
Oh,
run. But
okay.
but that action will run on the merge.
Well, now that you say that, and I look at it more carefully, that is exactly what's happening. And if I had read it more closely, I wouldn't be confused because the end-to-end test is clearly passing here. I see what you're saying. Thank you, John, for explaining the words in front of me that I could not interpret. Also, if you're noticing that the read the docs isn't building right now, it's because we have a couple of outstanding pull requests that I think are going to fix that. So we just have to merge those. And after we did the merge for UV last week, we decided to just sort of make sure that everything still worked on the various instances that we test on. Obviously, we tested it. We checked it before testing, but the UV change was a pretty big one, so we wanted to let that settle for a little bit before we merged the other ones. But I think we're ready to merge the other ones now, and that will fix the doc build that you're seeing there. So, other topics that folks might have. I see Zhang and Asish from the Google Summer of Code are here, and of course, I know what you've been working on. I don't know if you want to share any of the work that you've been doing yet. Certainly not required to right now.
Okay, I can do that. And actually, this week I still bring some correction, and I'm sure maybe later I could bring it up. And most of them related to the branch that we just mentioned. So currently I have some answer, and I can keep advance update for this week what I have worked on and for Google Summer of Code and for this project. And so what I have worked on, and I automated the full topic modeling pipeline from not just from loading the data and
Do
but
you want to
also to
share your screen, Zhang, or it's
oh
okay if
yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
checking?
better.
Hmm.
Better. I think that's better. Wait a minute. Okay, I just share my screen here. Wait a
Note
minute.
taker got in here. How about
Okay.
that?
Okay, I can send the Google documentations on our chat, and then I'll share my screen so
Okay.
everyone can better understand what am I talking about? Okay. So
All right.
okay.
So yeah, the document that Zhang Xie shared in the
So,
chat is kind of an outline of her intended design here.
okay. Okay, am I right? Oh, stop sharing. Sorry. Wait a minute. Okay. Everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so actually I have two screens, so I'm not sure am I sharing the correct one. So the
I'm
correct
seeing
one will be
tasks.py and a Google Doc right now. So I think we're seeing your desktop.
okay, yeah, perfect. That would be great. So yeah, so last week is basically more about the database migration script, and this way is all about the pipeline. And I just quickly go through what I have worked on here and in a simple way. So first I automated the through topic modeling pipeline, and yeah, not just from the loading the data, but also to the saving the output. And for now, every step runs smoothly, and it's easier to repeat to run those models, and which is great with what I want. And I set out my versioning system using the models ID, and all results it work, and all file and the result are saved under the how could say it here. This part
Right.
artifacts.
Your screen is a little small
Also,
for us to see.
okay.
Just there you go.
There we go. That's better. Yeah, that's better. And okay.
So the idea of your project is topic modeling so that
Yeah.
we can have a breakdown using and the particular advance that you're working on is that the topic modeling is of course of the message excuse me of the messages that occur on pull requests and issues on a project. And one of the limitations of some of the current topic modeling technology in Augur is you have to predetermine the number of topics and before you run the algorithm. And so Zhihong is employing I think it's the
New
HP.
model. Yeah,
Yeah.
HTTP is the new one. This new model can help us just automatically check out and count what exactly topic we actually need. So basically it means it's not preset the topic number, but this algorithm can help us automatically comes out what exactly model that we need, that which is great, help us to improve the accuracy. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not having to sort of guess at the number of topics just removes a lot of trial and error from the process, and I think is leading to some much more interesting topic models. So I'm excited to see the continued development of the work that you're doing. Thank you, Zhihong. And I know Ashish is also here, or he was, maybe. Yeah, I see him. I don't know. I don't know if you want to share anything, Ashish. You don't have to. Um, I don't want to put the pressure on you. Just call attention to the work that you and Ascot are doing. Um,
Yeah,
did you want to say anything about it, or?
yeah. So for the past weeks, we have implemented the contributors metric, and I and Akshat was deciding on what would be the time frame when the materialized view will get refreshed. So we have set it to 1 week as of now, and yeah, we are moving to 8K knot, integrating it in 8K knot.
8 knot
Yeah,
or
8K.
8K. I didn't, it never occurred to me that 8 knot is actually 8K knot as well. How you said it. That that's
Yeah,
interesting. That's I had never interpreted it that way, but you're right. It does look, it could also be 8K knot. Interesting. So you're working on the back end piece with the data and assembling data, reorganizing data in a materialized view and then presenting the results of that in 8 knot, and maybe provide just like a brief overview of the sort of the purpose of the pipeline and what you're building there.
So the main thing that we're building is, let's say we have a big repository and the maintainers want to expand their team and find out which level are we at in terms of contributors. How many contributors do we have at a particular level? By level, what I mean is we have three different levels: D0, D1, and D2. So D0 is one where any contributor or anyone interacts with the GitHub repository by marking it, starring it, or watching it, or just making a issue. And the D1, we say, are those who are making a pull request or doing a pull request review. And D2 is the highest level in the contributor metric scale, which tells us that which are people who have more than three pull requests that are merged already. So those are assigned in D2, and they are called like a seasoned contributor who contributes a lot to this project. So these contributors are crucial to that open source project. And yeah, maintainers can look their demographic location using GitHub API. We store that and other stuffs to figure out who they should be targeting to get new contributors just like those.
So it's a contributor. It's basically this is the contributor pipeline metric that Yahui defined a couple years ago that we're working on incorporating into the 8 knot interface and the Augur data aggregation. I think it's fair to characterize it as kind of a data aggregation worker. So it's taking data that's already collected in Augur and building a materialized view that reflects these different stages of contributor engagement. So that a project can see the pipeline of new people and how they do or do not progress through that pipeline. And of course, most people never progress to maintainer, but hopefully some do on most projects. Thanks,
Yeah.
Ashish. Let's see here. So guess we did the GSOC reviews. Anything else that anyone wants to bring up in the context of today's Augur meeting? I can return some time to you if you don't have anything, or I'm happy to talk about any topic Augur or 8 knot related that any of you wants to discuss. Okay. Oh, Alvin, I see Alvin has a hand up. Sorry, I don't. Alvin, do you have sorry about that. It's weird.
Oh yeah,
Oh, no,
sorry.
I see it. Sorry, my Zoom did not do the pop-up for me right away, but it showed the hand first, and then the pop-up occurred. Sorry, I'm just giving you Zoom play-by-play, but it was very weird how that happened on my computer today just now. So go ahead, Alvin. Sorry.
Yeah, so right now, if I'm not mistaken, 8 knot is deployed in an EC2 instance, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that so confidently, but I've been in
Yes, it
conversation.
is. So
Yeah.
I guess whenever like the deployment in the EC2, that is like a Red Hat thing versus, so we'll see where this is going. But yeah, so the deployment in the EC2 is like a Red Hat based thing versus like kind of looking at 8 knot as a community project. But we'll see where this kind of like falls under.
Oh, okay. I was actually during the weekend I was looking into Amazon Web Services serverless offerings because with that we can potentially save like a lot of costs. So I got a diagram if I can share that.
Yeah. I have not made myself familiar with Amazon's serverless offerings, and I'm trying to get my head around what that might even be. I'm sure it's just a series of microservices that are get woven into one to become a server in some way, but
You guys see this?
we can.
Yeah. Uh, so essentially, how it works is when we're performing a search, right? We first use something called an API gateway. So
Yeah.
the API gateway is just like a way of routing API calls to like certain serverless objects. And then actually let me explain what this is. So this is a Lambda, an AWS Lambda function.
Okay.
Basically how it works is it will execute a task, and once it's finished executing the task, it will shut down whatever VM it was using. And a nice thing about that is that it's very cheap. It's like I believe the pricing is
I will say that we're gonna talk about like EC2 pricings and stuff. I think this might need to be like a meeting, like a Red Hat meeting. I just don't want to go into like Red Hat hosting costs and things in a community
Oh,
call.
yes. Yeah. I don't, if you're showing Red Hat Lambda costs, Alvin, you should turn this off.
It's not
oh no,
cost
this
for
is
Red
the
Hat. I'm just
cost for
saying that for
AWS
like
Lambda.
yeah, just going into the AWS hosting and stuff is might we can go through it a little bit, but I do feel like this might be diving into something that's pretty Red Hat specific.
So I would say
Okay.
keep it generic. So I think the
Okay.
topic of serverless is interesting and the cost differences are interesting. Just try to keep the specifics of Red Hat's costs out of it.
Okay.
I think that's what
Uh
Kelly's saying. Am I right,
yeah.
Kelly?
It's more of just the topic. Like, I'm not like worried about anything being secret. It's more of just like respecting that this is a community call and wanting to keep to community topics rather than this being like a Red Hat call
Oh,
talking about an infrastructure thing that has to do specifically with Red Hat.
I
Yeah,
mean,
because when you're talking about costs, all of these companies, I'll just be general, not just Red Hat, but all of these companies have negotiated agreements with people like AWS. So the pricing that they pay is not necessarily the pricing that's on the website.
mhm.
So so you kind of have to compare what Red Hat's actually paying with what they would pay if they switched to this, which is an internal Red Hat discussion. So I think that Callie, is that your point?
Sort of. It's just more that like if we're gonna be talking about hosting and things, it's more of it being a like Red Hat discussion versus a community discussion of something that like
Yeah.
impacts people that are in the
the,
community.
I mean, so from a generalist perspective, if we could, it sounds like we're keeping the Red Hat pricing out of it. This is just generic. I think it's interesting because obviously I've hosted Augur myself and I've had lots of organizations who do or want to host Augur. So if there is a lower cost entry point, I think it's interesting I mean, it's interesting to me. I don't know if it's interesting to others on the call, but to me, it's interesting that there is this technology that might be substantially less costly um, for hosting something like Augur.
Yeah, I guess uh so I'm not gonna dive into the cost too much then, but basically this will at least lower the entry point to like actually running this for smaller organizations.
How
And
does
there's
this
How
no
do
like
you,
need
impact like what changes need to be made to the code base, I guess, for this? Is this like just a hosting side thing? Does this require like a refactor of the code base? I guess it seems like a pretty substantial change.
yeah, it would require a refactor of the code base. Yeah.
And then how does this impact it if you're just running 8 not locally and you're not using
Uh
AWS?
this would essentially be like only like 100% AWS. It will not be able to be hosted locally.
Okay.
um,
Unfortunately,
uh,
then I don't see that might not be a path that we can move forward with.
yeah, it's not I think, yeah, the general path that we've maintained, I think, across the Chaos project is to not tightly couple anything that we do to a particular vendor's stack.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and so
Or
I think,
like being able to run locally. Like I think it's really important to be able to run and
yeah,
be able to develop locally.
yeah, if it was like you could take the code base and run it on EC2 and you could take the code base and run it this way, then that would be one thing. But it sounds like this would be a refactoring of code to serve only this architecture that Amazon provides, which
Okay.
isn't something we would generally do as part of the open source project. It wouldn't prevent anyone else from doing it if they wanted to, but it would make it harder to support.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
And
that
I
makes
think,
sense.
and John makes a point in chat that certainly don't want to like run over that point. And the larger point is that uh, in general, microservices architecture like this, there are others that exist. Lambda is one direction, but there are other microservices architectures through which one could deploy software that may in fact be in the long run less expensive than hosting on EC2, which is of course just an approximation of bare metal. So it's always the coarsest, fastest way to get something into the cloud. Um, and we have used Lambda before with Augur for various Slack notifiers and things like that. So I have a general knowledge of it existing in these microservices architectures, but maybe the larger idea of thinking about microservices architectures for some of these things is certainly not something to lose entirely, but we probably won't pursue an AWS specific solution.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And John McGinnis, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to your chat comment there.
No, not anything that hasn't already been said, but as was mentioned before, the main issue with AWS Lambda in particular is that if you code for it, it is not possible to run outside of AWS Lambda. So definitely, I think that Lambda is not something that we necessarily want to look into targeting for running like Augur core stuff. But there are, and actually, there is a GitHub repo that has just a list of like open source frameworks and platforms for microservice stuff. So that might be worth looking into if we wanted to move towards something like this. And there are not a lot of microservice frameworks that you can self-host, but there are a couple. So that might be something
Oh my
just to
God.
consider for the future.
Sorry, I got distracted. I cleaned the window on my thing and a bird just flew into it. So I don't know. I just have to fix that. I don't want birds flying into my window. Poor guys. Sorry. So this is the repository that you're referring to, John, that just lists a series of microservices toolkits. It looks like these are by language, for example,
Mhm.
and the different capabilities. I won't read through the whole thing, but this certainly looks like a very interesting resource that beyond just the even without thinking of Augur or 8-knot, I think the if folks are interested in understanding microservices better, this is certainly interesting. And if you're using AI at all, you probably are familiar with the various MCP servers that are emerging for different specific tasks, really creating kind of a microservices architecture around AI right now. So I can imagine the general idea of microservices is only going to get bigger.
Yeah, sounds good. That's a pretty cool repository.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for bringing
It's
that to
a
our.
lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a repo with all the MCP servers in it that I can share when I find that link. I don't have it handy right now, but it might also be interesting to folks on this call. Not related to Augur 8, not really right now, but still possibly interesting. Other topics that anyone wants to bring up with the time that we have remaining? All right. Well, if no one has any further topics, I will thank you for participating. Thank you all for your contributions to Augur. I think everybody on this call has contributed significantly to Augur and or 8-knot. So thank you for all of that. And I'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.